Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their business on their terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Now here's your host, CEO Mastery Partners, Tom Bronson.
Hi, this is Tom Bronson, and welcome to Maximize Business Value, a podcast for business owners who are passionate about building long-term sustainable value in your business. You're probably going to get tired of hearing this, but every business on the planet will eventually transition. And wouldn't it be better if that transition of your business was by design rather than default? So if you're a business owner who wants to maximize your value when you eventually exit your business, and you know you will, then you're in the right place. This is where we teach you how to maximize that value. This episode is part of our series on my latest book, Maximize Business Value Playbook, 65 specific actions to dramatically increase the value of your business. Today, we're on chapter 26, Formalize that Documentation. So let's jump right in. If something is worth saying, then it's probably also worth putting it in writing. I grew up in the Deep South, and I know that people still to this day who will take a handshake over a written agreement. A handshake means more to them than anything else. Well, that's great when you're dealing with those folks, but in any business, an owner should memorialize everything that they intend. Now, if a commitment is not in writing, then there's a risk that each side will recall the conversation and commitment very differently. And when this applies, this really truly applies double for business owners. Business owners sometimes have conversations with employees to float ideas, but unfortunately, unless that intent is very clear, there's a significant risk that the employees will hear the conversation very differently. Although the owner may forget the conversation, the employee will not, particularly if the conversation is around compensation or ownership of the business. Here's a great example that comes to mind. Many years ago, I purchased a business from three young entrepreneurs who told their managers for years that when the company sold, they would reward them handsomely. I paid nearly $14 million for that business. And before closing, I asked if there had been money set aside for the key managers and the other employees. The sellers assured me that they would take care of their people. Now, by the way, if you're wondering why I would ask that, to reduce the seller's tax consequences, I could go ahead and just parse out that money and pay it off to other folks, and that way it would reduce their tax consequences. But regardless, after closing, the owners presented a grand total of $100,000 in bonuses to about 25 employees. That's less than 1% of the transaction. And of course, the key employees already knew the deal's value, and they were dumbfounded by the tiny checks that they received. It took months for the dust to settle on that terrible situation that could have been easily avoided if an agreement had been in place in writing. You see, the employees thought they had the same conversation, but the employees thought differently. In the end, they had different realities about the promised compensation. So the lesson here is that if it's worth saying, so in other words, we're going to reward you handsomely, then it's worth documenting. Formalize and document any agreement that might cause a conflict later. The business owner and the employees will feel better and more secure, and that will lead to increased business value. So the Maximize Business Value recommended actions this week are: document any verbal or handshake agreements. Don't let them just linger out there. Document them, put them in writing. Number two, ensure that the document is signed by all parties involved so that everybody knows. And number three, Search the internet for articles on reasons to have written agreements. It'll entertain you for hours. Up next week, we finish up on the legal matters section of the book, and then it's straight into human resources. Don't miss it. This is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners on how to build long-term sustainable value in your business. If this is the first time you've stumbled onto the Maximize Business Value podcast, well, we're 186 episodes and counting. That's almost 200 episodes packed with valuable information just waiting for your download wherever you found this podcast. So go download them today and like us, please. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to pick one thing, just one thing to dramatically improve the value of your business today, and do it while you maximize business value.
Thank you for tuning into the Maximize Business Value podcast with Tom Bronson. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their terms. Learn more on how to build long-term sustainable business value and get free value-building tools by visiting our website, www.masterypartners.com. That's master with a Y, masterypartners.com. Check it out.
That was perfect. I wouldn't make any changes on that.